Well, hello and welcome to this late evening dinner nugget. I mean, is anybody trying to get a nugget this late in the evening? I didn't come to you at lunch today, but I want to come to you right now and talk to you for a few minutes about this thought. What do you do when a bad day meets the verse, rejoice in the Lord always? Then Philippians there, it says that little verse, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. But there's some days you just don't want to rejoice in. Today was one of those days for me. Nothing could go right at work today. Not the people. People were great, everything like that. But it's just one of those days when nothing seemed to go right. And I'm in a learning process at work, going through some new things. And I'm good at learning through stumbling, but I hate stumbling when it affects other people. And boy, today was one of those days, and so I was down, discouraged, and just a long day when it comes to those things. But then again, you have that verse. So when bad day meets, rejoice in the Lord always. And it's always terrible counsel when you're having a bad day and someone comes up to you and say, well, we're just rejoice in the Lord always. Say, all right, thank you, boom. That's not always the greatest of counsel, but it is true. And the Spirit of God will often say, hey, rejoice in the Lord. So what do you do when a bad day meets rejoice in the Lord always? And that's really what I'm outside doing right now. I'm just trying to get a little bit of time with the Lord. And I was thinking of this verse in Psalm 73. In Psalm 73, the psalmist was going through just an absolute bad time. He actually says, verse 2, but as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. He said, I was gone. I was discouraged. I was frustrated. In his case, he was frustrated with the wicked prospering. But the very last verse of the whole chapter, here's what he says. He says, but it is good for me to draw near to God. So he spends a whole chapter discouraged and the whole chapter saying, I'm struggling. And the whole chapter frustrated that the wicked are prospering and he's not prospering. And in the very end, the very last verse, he says this, but it's good for me to draw near to God. I think that's great counsel. I think it's very wise of the psalmist, whoever wrote it, in that moment when he was struggling. And that's what I'm trying to do here today. Actually 2 or 3 days ago, I highlighted that on my YouVersion app, that little verse, and I was coming back to it today as I just kind of sat down outside, took a nice walk with my wife, and I just sat down and I thought of that verse again, but it's good for me to draw near to God. A lot of people take a bad day and they try to drink it away in the evening. They try to maybe do drugs to get rid of it in the evening, or they run to a medicine. But I think God is that source for us as Christians. He's the one that is the great comforter. He's the one that wants to encourage us. He's the one that reminds us. So it's good to rejoice in the Lord. Remember all that God has done for you. Stop and count his blessings. Stop and think about the things that he's done, that he's provided that job that may not have went so well today, but God's provided it. There's so many blessings that we could list and I could list today. So I think, what do you do when a bad day meets rejoice in the Lord always? We'll stop and think, what can I do to draw close to God? Because the closer we draw to God, the more it causes us to be thankful, the more it causes us to rejoice, the more it causes us to realize all that he has done for us, whether it be through salvation, whether it be through our family, and whatever it may be. And so, I don't know what your day was like today. My day just really stunk. I thought it was going to be a good day, and it turned out to be a pretty poor day. But I'm going to do my best for the next little bit to rejoice in the Lord and get my focus back on him. And tomorrow will be better. I know it will be. And if not, guess what? God's still there. That's what's amazing about our God. We don't need to drown it away in anything else, and we don't need to stay discouraged. We can rejoice in the Lord. So I hope you're having a good evening. I hope you're having a wonderful week. And if not, when your bad day meets rejoice in the Lord, choose to rejoice in him and trust God. He goes on in that later in that verse. He says, I have put my trust in the Lord that I may declare all thy works. I can declare all God's works. And so trust God. Keep your eyes fixed on him. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening to this late night dinner nugget. Why not? Have a good evening.